pretty manner, in addition to some very fine trees, can boast 2 or 3 large vineries. So they describe this very grand house and the gardens around it. Now, of course, today the gardens aren't there because, again, the city's come right up to the edge. But there's still there's just a sense of what was going on. And some of this fabulous woodwork is there. I mean, these are all obviously very modern doors. And the next one, and you can see here, so it is used as a very active school. And they told me to put my camera away at this point, actually. But you can see here, and this is very common, is the green paint that came out in 1948 to, just sort of a sense of nationalism, if you like. Just very common. Next one. And around Gujranwala is a very, very Sikh city pre-partition. It was largely a Sikh and Hindu place. And there is, again, this is a residence today, but it was a Gurdwara in its time. Sri Guru Singh Sabha, it says at the top there. And you can just see on the doors little kundet being picked out in the woodwork there. So a really nice quality building, but today it's split up into 4 or 5 apartments and used as such. And I just want to conclude with this final picture, which takes us back to Jahangir's tomb in Shardara, just north of Lahore. And when I went, when you go around the broad boundaries of this, it's enclosed by a low wall, and the low wall has jali work all around it. Jalis are those they're constructed out of marble, but they're made with multiple sort of holes, for want of a better word. And they give you. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's the work. So what you get is you get a window without glass, right? And this particular jali had been a hole had been blown through it by the residents on the other side, because they didn't want to pay the 5 rupees to get in. So they just took a brick to the jali work and made a hole and climbed through. And the day that we arrived, they were just finishing off bricking it up. And now this is in Jahangir's tomb. This is like Buckingham Palace. This is their most important heritage asset there. And they can't stop this kind of vandalism going on and this kind of damage going on. And they're fairly sanguine about it. They go, well, put a brick wall, at least they can't do it now. The wider point was somewhat lost. But, this is the environment that our Sikh heritage in Lahore and around Pakistan is currently in some very, very fragile state. It's still fabulous. It's still, we can see more within the 40-kilometre radius around the old city of Lahore than, unfortunately, we can see in our part of Punjab. Partly because the centre of gravity was always in Lahore, but partly also because our part of the Indian part of Punjab has suffered so much from very poor conservation, very poor restoration, and rebuilding, as we all well know. But the heritage that does sit there is also sitting in an extraordinarily fragile base. And I think, if anything, this picture here really just sums up the state that that's in. So that is my last photograph. I hope you enjoyed that. Well, there's loads of facts. I took them all out. I can talk about these, but I'll just bore you, Rob. There's Gujarat. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you. So, if you have questions or comments, I'd really like to hear them.
What is important is, I'm looking at, I didn't realize there's so much wealth actually still left in Pakistan. Because the art of fresco painting, I think, was influenced by the period of Ellora and Ajanta, of the art of fresco painting and all that, which gradually spread around south and went right up to Sri Lanka. And I saw some very good fresco paintings from the rock of Syria in Sri Lanka. And it gave the same kind of influence. And similarly, I think I'm surprised, and indeed I'm very proud of it, that the Sikhs carried out a similar kind of painting up in the north, in our Gurdwaras and so on, which is fascinating, I think.
Yeah, the art is, there's painting on rock, which is just the art of not just, but it's the art of painting on rock. But there's fresco painting, which is the art of painting on wet plaster.
That's right, absolutely.
It's quite different.
Very quick to do it.
Yes, you have to be very confident to do it. Because you make a mark and the mark sticks. So thank you. Yes, sir.
Some of the lesser known places, are they well marked for?
Are they well?
Some of the lesser known places, are they well marked for people who want to visit these places?
Not the lesser known. No, not the lesser known. I was quite encouraged in the old city. There are quite a lot of very enterprising tour guides who know what Sikhs look like and what they're interested in, and will take you, and they're remarkably good. They don't know much of the background, and they often have, their own biases naturally, but they can certainly take you to places. But no, they're not very well marked. Infrastructure generally is very poor in Pakistan, so signage and education materials are not terribly good. But that's one of the things I want to do. We're going to move to... See, I keep banging on about conservation. I'm sorry, it's always in the front of my mind, but there's many ways you can try fixing the conservation problem. One of them is just to pour millions and millions of pounds into it. But that's something that often most of us don't have. Another way is to, and it's a proven path, is to encourage tourism. And when tourists go, they spend dollars, and the local economy gets built up. But national governments also recognise that they need to improve the infrastructure to attract more of that. So it becomes a business imperative, an economic imperative. And one of the things I want to do with some of the work that I do on the internet is to try to promote tourism. We're going to start actually not with West Punjab, but with East Punjab, with India, because obviously more Sikhs are going there. But just, again, there's a hidden heritage in East Punjab that's similar that we don't know.
Yeah, I was just to know, I mean, you find these buildings are found in Pakistan, in Lahore. Now, why is it that the Sikhs over in India, why haven't they given it a bother? And why are these places deteriorating? Why hasn't anyone, like even, say, the Gurdwaras, I mean, why haven't they invested any money so that these buildings can still be kept even now? I mean, these are Sikh buildings which everyone is so very interested in because of the art. Then, I mean, what's happening? I mean, why is it it's only
well,
now?
traditionally, of course, it's been very. If you're an Indian, not like us, we're British, right? But if you're an Indian to move to Pakistan, to go to Pakistan for any reason, it's very, very difficult.
Okay.
So there's just been a barrier. There's just been a political barrier. Right? It's actually easier for us to go to Pakistan than it is to cross the border.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, sorry, there is communication between India and Pakistan, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I say invest, I mean, what we can do in India is say, I don't know, bring over money to the people around Pakistan who are willing to look after the buildings for us. I mean, is that not possible?
There's kind of a couple of answers to that, I think. One is that at the time of partition, the sorts of buildings that I've showed you there, both in India and in Pakistan, so these were kind of sacred spaces, public areas, even some private residences as well. There was a kind of reciprocal agreement between the new Pakistani government and the Indian government to hold those in trust, to hold those by a board, an evacuee board, I think the English translation is. So there's a kind of a layer of bureaucracy that sort of sits on both sides, but certainly in Pakistan. So there's that. The second thing is there's no economic imperative to doing that. Why would an Indian Gurdwara, why would it invest in a building in Pakistan for an altruistic reason? It wouldn't. It would only do it for preserve the art. Now, unfortunately, the truth is they're not preserving the art that's in Punjab or the buildings that are in our part of Punjab, in East Punjab, let alone something in the enemy's country. Right? So there really hasn't been those kinds of imperatives there to do that. But you can see, hopefully I've shown you in that presentation, and you can think back to what you've seen as you've travelled in East Punjab, that the process of poverty and neglect, which is essentially what those structures sit in, right, neglect and poverty, is actually a really good preservative. Because only when people start messing around with things, they start painting things, because they don't know any better, right? They start painting things, they start knocking things down, start putting marble on stuff. That's where you get destruction. And actually neglect is not a bad thing. So I'm kind of encouraged that they haven't messed around too much with it.
Do you think, Amandeep, that the SGPC in Amritsar has got a role to play in this at all? Preservation?
Quite honestly, I think everyone's got a role to play. I think the SGPC, by virtue of the fact that they hold so much money and they are an organisation, do have a role to play in it. My fear is that they lack the expertise, the skill to actually carry out.
I think it's more will actually rather than expertise.
Well, they have, and they also lack the mandate as well, because their mandate, their political mandate, is in Punjab and not across the border. And I think they're desperately trying to have some kind of mandate in Pakistan. But given that they have the resources to do it, my fear would be that they just don't have the expertise or the skill, and they haven't really even got the track record, unfortunately, to do it either. If they can correct those things, then they absolutely do have a role to play.
They're the first ones they'll be painting over, then they'll just put a pen on it. Simple fact, I've seen it myself. They'll make it white, they'll make that white, put 3-4 khandi around it and say this was the place where such and such princess was, and that's it. So it's better that they don't touch it.
There is an organisation in Pakistan.
Punjab, Sikh, Gurdwara
Pakistan,
Committee.
Sikh, Gurdwara.
Oh, right. Committee.
Yeah,
right.
They're similar to the SGPC,
Same thing, the opposite.
But I think there's politics between them too. They're not getting on.
I think, the role of the Indian Gurdwara Prabandhak, or the Indian Gurdwaras, is not, they don't see their role as preserving these sorts of arts or culture. They don't. So they don't see that as their role. I'm not certain how they would describe their own mandate in that respect, but this isn't part of their role. So they've never invested anything in doing that. And in fact, they, a lot of the restaurant kaseva is all outsourced. To use a very modern term, it's all given to kasevas, or sold to kasevas to carry out the work. And they lack. Again, that expertise.
Green toilet.
Yeah.
Baba Talguda.
The tiling.
In Amritsar, there's a Baba Talguda.
Right
in the complex. And 5, 6 floors. Is it 5 floors?
7 floors.
7 floors, 5 has disappeared. There's only 2 left. And the bottom one now is just green toilet tiles. You know the little green toilet tiles? Khanda.
Picture of Guru
all the
Nanak,
pictures, Guru Nanak, Guru Gobind Singh, great warriors. It's just green tiles.
Have you got those pictures?
I think I've seen that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you, when we talk about funds,
Yes.
UNESCO has got funds for heritage sites, and do the Sikhs ever try to tap into
UNESCO have got a really important part to play, because UNESCO do have expertise and skill, and they can draw on the World Heritage Status body, which is extraordinarily skilled at this kind of thing. In fact, I paint a horrible picture of whitewashing, but it was UNESCO experts that had discovered how to take whitewashing off of a fresco with their Italian experience and uncover what's underneath. With the older types of whitewashing, with the acrylics, it doesn't work. So they certainly do have a role to play. They're not generally funded. They're generally funding through IMF and World Bank money, which is again in infrastructure. But Sikhs have never, to my knowledge, have never tapped into those sorts of things. I personally think, and I know this has turned into a very political debate, but World Heritage status, certainly for the secular buildings, I know it's awkward with religious buildings, but the status that UNESCO can give, the protection that UNESCO can give to heritage sites is enormous, because a country or a unilateral body or a statutory body simply can't interfere with the fabric of a building if it's got World Heritage status. And that's proven to be extremely successful. And there's examples in Cambodia with Angkor Wat, most of China, where the government would just love to tear down some of the older buildings in economic zones, but they can't because they've got heritage status and UNESCO's eyes are on them. So I think UNESCO's eyes are actually more powerful. We don't lack money, do we?
Especially in Shanghai.
Especially, yeah, precisely. That's exactly where they're. We don't lack money. You know, resources are never a problem. We can put up buildings. We can preserve a few as well if we try to.
Aren't most of the buildings privately owned now, though, isn't it? So they wouldn't want to. They don't have the resources to preserve.
The ownership is rarely the actual issue. Anything can be bought. Land values in Lahore aren't actually what I expect. In the old city, it's not a very desirable place to be. So that's never really the principal issue. Even the fella at the Maharaja Singh Samadhi, which I showed him in his leather jacket, he was quite prepared to open up a dialogue to sell his storeroom as far as he's concerned. He's quite prepared to do that. Now, to actually embark upon the path of buying it and restoring it takes huge amounts of resources and organisation. And there isn't that kind of really that ground. There isn't an organised body to be able to do that, unfortunately, at this stage. Hopefully, there will be at some stage in the future.
Thank you, Amandeep.